welcome, Ben. Thank you so much for joining me on the Scaling Europe show. I'm a huge fan. I'm actually very annoyed because I meant to bring my own mini Yoto with me. My daughters absolutely love it, but I forgot to bring it.
How old is your daughter?
I've got a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old. So we've got about 8 or 9 of the cards, but the only one that we ever use is like the nursery rhymes one. It's like the wheels on the bus, and it's just like on at all times, but we love it. So anyway, before we kind of get into it all, can you just give very high level introduction into who you are and what you're building?
Yes, I'm Ben, co-founder and CEO of Yoto, and we built Yoto for our own kids. My co-founder and I both happen to have kids around the same time, and we were working together previously at a company I founded called 7 Digital, which is like a B2B digital music platform. And we really we wanted to create this user experience for children to be able to access this incredible world of audio, but without screens and without microphones. And we basically just started prototyping stuff several years ago, not even thinking it could be a business at the time, just having fun, geeking out with soldering irons. And then we realized we were onto something. Our kids loved it, but maybe we were guilty of confirmation bias at that point. So we then tested it with a bunch of other families, and then we realized we were onto something. And we then went on Kickstarter, and then the rest is history.
And this is your third business, is that right? Was it Dot Music was your first?
Yeah, I mean, Dot Music actually was an internal venture at a big media company, but I was there from the very beginning, and we ended up selling it to Yahoo. So that was my kind of first dry run of entrepreneurialism, but within the comfort of a big company. And then I struck out on my own and started 7 Digital back in 2004.
So this is, all 3 ventures businesses have been in the audio space, in the music space. Where does that come from? Is that a passion of yours? Is that something you always wanted to work on? Is that just sort of what you fell into?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was a kid, growing up in the middle of nowhere, I was playing in bands, had long hair, and I was passionate about music, was drawn to the big city lights of London, studied physics and philosophy at King's College London, but really I was secretly wanting to be in the music industry, and then I got a job in the music industry. So music and audio have always been a passion of mine.
No, amazing. And there's lots I want to get into, but firstly, I want to talk about the financial results. So this came out, I think, last week in the Financial Times. I posted about it on LinkedIn, and there were dozens and dozens of amazingly complimentary and supportive kind of comments. I think people love either what you're building or your background. You seem to have built a real, almost like a cult product. It feels like people really love it. But just to go into the financial results, £95 million of revenue, growing 86% year over year, 8 million of losses, but as a result of like £7 million exceptional costs. I want to get on, the first thing is costs and losses, I guess. You've always been quite close to profitability. How have you managed to kind of balance scaling a hardware product with having quite tight financial controls?
Yeah, we've always had this mantra of sustainable growth. We went through that, that difficult period of 2021 or 2022 when the free money era dried up and interest rates went up, and we had a tough fundraise then. And we were like, we need to get to profitability. So we've actually been EBITDA positive now for a couple of years. We've been really strict. We also know that hardware, with a company that has a hardware component, and we don't really call ourselves a hardware company, but we clearly have hardware, as you know. Working capital is key. You don't want to have all your money locked up in physical products on a boat or in a warehouse. So we've been really, really careful with that, and we have great partners in HSBC and JP Morgan who support us with that kind of side of things. But yeah, we've taken the view that we want to be around for a long time, and we want to grow as fast as we can, of course, and I think we're showing pretty solid growth. But there's also a limit to how fast we can grow having a physical product. We're not like an app which can suddenly explode and become massive overnight. We have physical products, so we have to make stuff, and so there was a kind of a nice Goldilocks zone of growth that we try to achieve.
Yeah, and let's going back to some of that growth. I think you've grown 80% year over year, over 80% year over year for the last couple of years. And where's that growth come from? Is that primarily international expansion?
No, I mean, it's a combination of things. The US, we actually managed to launch in the US quite early. We really commercially launched Yoto in February 2020, just as COVID hit. And then we managed to launch in the US in June 2020. I still don't quite know how we did it, because at the time we had no one on the ground and we couldn't travel there, but we found some great partners to get our product out there. And the US has been a big story for us, but we've seen great growth in all the markets that we've been in. And I think encouragingly, you mentioned Yoto being a cult product, but we've had such strong word of mouth around Yoto. About 60% of our customers come through word of mouth. Don't get me wrong, we still spend quite a lot on marketing and we still spend a lot of money on PR and advertising, but if we didn't have such strong word of mouth, which obviously demonstrates incredible product market fit, then it probably wouldn't be so easy to have that sustainable growth. We'd have to spend a lot more.
And can we touch on that early US expansion? So, I read you had a mini chapter in the index book, when the index book is all about launching in the US. And as you said, you launched very, very early. You kind of went there, and I think it was quite light, almost your footprint initially. I think you hired one person quite early on. What was the rationale about going to the US early, and what approach did you take to trying to make it a success?
We knew that for this business to really work, we had to launch in the US. And from our Kickstarter days, we had a very small Kickstarter campaign, but we could see there was strong demand from the US. And there really wasn't any local competition. There was no US, surprisingly, there were no US companies doing anything in this space. Whereas in Europe, we had a big German competitor and there was a French competitor. So we knew for this to really work, we had to get to the US, and we had to get to the US quickly. And we knew it would work in the US. We just knew. And we had a great content lineup early on. We had Roald Dahl, we had Enid Blyton. We knew these kind of classic British English stories would work in the US. There's already proven demand for that. And we've followed that with Harry Potter, etc. But we have a lot of US content as well. And we didn't believe the old school VC philosophy that the founders had to move there. I frankly didn't want to move to the US. I mean, I would have done it earlier in my life, but having young kids, I wasn't ready to move to the US. But we really believe we can make it work without having to do that.
And how did you make that work? Was that very early hire that you, I think in the book you talked about that early hire being a sort of all-rounder generalist expert operator. Was that a very, very key hire in enabling you to not have to move there?
Yeah, it was really important to meet a great early hire, Sarah Natchez, who's still with us and very much running our US business. She'd been a COO for another company in kids space for a number of years, and she was just a perfect hire. That was the scariest hire, because in the US, the salaries are really high, and we had to hire Sarah without actually physically meeting her. But sometimes you just got to trust your gut and go with it.
And it paid off. And you've seen amazing growth. Your EBITDA positive. Are you forecasting that this level of growth is going to continue? Are you expecting to grow 80% this year and next year, or do you see a point where growth is naturally going to slow down as you start to mature?
Well, I think at our scale now, 100 million turnover, it is harder to maintain that 80+% growth rate, just in terms of the number of pounds and dollars you have to generate. So, I mean, eventually there will be a percentage slowdown, but in terms of actual growth, in terms of our financial growth, we expect to remain very strong growth this year and continuing. We have some incredible product initiatives and some international expansion plans that will help us continue that growth rate. And we will see our profitability increase as well. So rather than just being EBITDA positive, we can be fully profitable on every single line or measure that you might want to consider.
No, I love it. You mentioned international expansion. I think you've already expanded, of course, into North America, I think France and Australia. Where else are you looking?
I mean, it definitely gets harder for us because we've done a lot of the easy English-speaking countries. Australia we launched in last July, and it's been absolutely phenomenal. The response to our products there has been incredible. There are a few other places that we're looking at. I can't reveal too many details on that for competitive reasons, but we've got some pretty cool plans there over the next few years.
Amazing. And can we touch on your partnership with 11 Labs, right? You talked about how you're in the dominant English-speaking markets. I saw that you've kind of announced this partnership with 11 Labs to help you go multilingual. Can you touch on what that partnership looks like and what it's going to unlock for you as you scale across the world?
Yeah, first to say, I'm a huge fan of Matty and the 11 Labs team. I got to know Matty really early when they just were, alpha stage. Probably only 3 years ago now, but it's phenomenal to watch, and it's great that they're just down in Soho, so I can zip down and see those guys, and we have good friends there, and we've been using their technology for a while. And for me, it's really how we can create new products and services for our customers. So the one thing that we've announced and been showcasing is multilingual content supporting minority languages. Yoto has been used in over 200 countries, even though we're really only operational in 5 countries. We're seeing usage in 200 countries. And we want to support a lot of the, say, minority languages that we just simply wouldn't be able to do without AI. So that's really exciting. But also with probably one of the most exciting things we're working on now is like dynamic content. So content that changes according to location or according to time. We've showcased some apps where we have live weather forecasts for kids, and there's even an app now that you can put in a card and it'll tell you that the plane that's flying over your house, it'll tell you all about that plane, where it's come from, where it's going, who the pilot is, and that's all using AI in 11 Labs. These are things that just simply wouldn't be possible before, so that's what I'm very excited about.
And is this part of your OpenAI and developer program?
Very much so. So you can now become a developer. We're running a competition right now, $10,000. We're seeing a lot of people vibe coding apps for Yoto, and there's a hook into 11 Labs in the APIs as well. So you can hook into 11 Labs to generate speech and sound effects and things like that. And we're really big believers in opening up our platform, and we're seeing people creating content on Yoto, educational content, stories, different languages, all kinds of weird and wacky stuff, and we love that.
Amazing. That's super cool. Your end product is like a bit of hardware, as you mentioned, but you're also sort of fostering this amazing software community where people are really coming in and building their own things and unlocking this whole world of like audio. And I don't know, I think it's fascinating. Can we just touch on like raising this hardware company or having a hardware product, especially in those early days of 2020, 2021? What was it like trying to convincing investors, VCs, that this is going to be something worth investing in?
A lot of VCs hate hardware, which in a way, when you're pitching to VCs, is quite a nice early filter, right? You obviously just say, let's end of conversation. They don't invest in hardware. Brilliant. It makes a founder's life actually easy. What you don't want is people stringing you along, which always happens. So it reduces your possible investor pool quite dramatically, having hardware, because a lot of VCs hate hardware. Although I think in an age of AI, it's maybe coming back in fashion, because it's more defensible than, say, a generic SaaS business, for example. But yeah, you have to find partners who are brave enough to back a hardware company and really getting them to understand that Yoto isn't a hardware company, actually. So our pitch was, we have hardware, but it's an enabler, and it's not where we make our money, and it's not where the growth is going to come from. Hardware is a means to an end, and there's some good analogies out there, like Nintendo. A huge fan of Nintendo as a company, and are they a hardware company? I just leave that as an open question.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. I think that game analogy is actually really interesting. I guess you're kind of supplying, that the hardware is necessary, but so many of the products are actually not physical, right? They're sort of the audio.
Yeah. Nintendo's IP business, Mario, Zelda, and the fact that those IPs have gone through many generations of the hardware, all the way back to the Game Boy and even earlier than that. Those IPs that they invested in have stood the test of time, and big fans of Nintendo and other companies like that.
Yeah, and almost become timeless. I want to talk about fundraising in general. You also mentioned that you want to become profitable on all bases very soon. You've managed to become EBITDA profitable with very minimal net losses over the last few years. But you also raised a big round last year. I think it was $20 million, was it? $22 million?
Yeah, that was raised in 2023. So we closed that in October 2023. So nearly 2 years ago now. That was a $22 million raise led by the Chan Zuckerberg initiative out of the US and some follow-on investors as well.
And did you see that as the end of your fundraising journey? Are you looking to raise more down the line to kind of fuel international expansion? Or do you think now that you are maturing, approaching profitability, you won't need to tap into it anymore?
It's fantastic to be in a position where we're kind of masters of our own destiny. It's a rare thing. Companies get even successful companies get in this cycle where they have to keep raising money, and that's the norm, right? But it's really nice to be in a position of having optionality. So if we decided that we want to go faster, or we see a particular opportunity with international expansion or a different product area, then it's great to have that optionality to raise money, but we don't need to raise money, and that's the best position to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's every entrepreneur's dream, I guess, and with your growth metrics and your successful expansion. Like you mentioned, it would be not too difficult to raise more money if you wanted to.
Yeah, we're getting constant approaches. So it's great that we've managed to get to a point where we have rather than me chasing investors, we have it's completely the opposite now. So that's a very nice position to be in, I have to say.
That is the dream. I'm sure it's every entrepreneur and founder's dream. So that's amazing to hear. I wanted to ask, you've built several businesses. You're now building Yoto, which is going incredibly well. What advice would you give to young, aspiring European entrepreneurs who are either early on in their journey or are thinking about taking the leap? What kind of lesson would you give, or bit of advice would you give to kind of get them on their way? It's really hard to give fairly generic advice, but the US, for example, was absolutely crucial for us. So get to the US as early as you can. I think that's true of the US market is fantastic. The US consumers are fantastic consumers. Get to the US as quickly as you can. Don't be afraid of it. I remember speaking to a lot of UK entrepreneurs who were like, oh, but the US is like a graveyard for UK companies. It's like, well, deal with it, get out there, be a zombie. Get into the graveyard and find a way to make it work. Otherwise, I don't believe you can go, oh yeah, we'll build it in the UK first, we'll build it up to a certain scale, and then we'll go to the US. Try to get to the US almost on day one. I think you have to do that. Don't be afraid of hardware, of course. I would have to say that. I do think in this world of AI, hardware is quite exciting. You can do stuff with AI on hardware, local LLMs running on hardware. I think we're going to see a lot of innovation in that space. And the UK is really good at hardware. We have some incredible engineering talent here. So don't be afraid of hardware. But yeah, I think that's enough. And I just wanted to touch on that hardware piece actually, because I think are you on your third generation now of Yoto hardware, or like Yoto devices? Going back to that sort of Nintendo parallel, how do you see the hardware itself developing over time?
I think the hardware does develop on a slower cycle. Obviously, the software than software. We've always tried to make sure that Yoto is software based, so we do constant software updates. We're doing OTA, over the air updates all the time to enhance the product, fix bugs, security issues, that kind of stuff. So we're very much software based there, but the hardware itself, the underlying roadmaps of the hardware we use do change, like Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and the underlying chipsets that we use. So it is important to have a hardware cycle, but it doesn't have to be that fast. Nintendo's for the Switch was 8 years between the Switch 1 and the Switch 2, and the Switch 2 is great, but it's not a huge change, right? It's not a completely new product. It's a kind of an incremental improvement on the Switch 1. So you don't need to do it too often, but I do think it's important to stay up to date with some underlying technological changes as well.
But will you, I guess, is the core hardware going to stay the same in the sense that it will always be like an audio box, in the sense that I guess Nintendo went from being like a console to handheld console. Do you see any radical changes like that, or do you think that the basic premise will always be the same?
Well, we have products that we really think are working really well. So we have the Yoto Player, which is more suited for your in-home, fixed position, kid's bedroom, still a portable device, but is great for in-home. And then Yoto Mini, which is really great for being portable. They both can work in both scenarios, but that's what they're optimized for. And Yoto Mini is our most popular product. It is the lower price point. So those are two products, and I think if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We will continue to develop those things. There may be other things we can do in the future, and there's also some really cool stuff we can do with accessories as well. So things that can be part of the ecosystem. And one of the things I'm most proud of actually is that if you went on Etsy and you search for Yoto, you get over 600 results of all kinds of weird and wonderful accessories, mostly people with 3D printers at home, creating all kinds of accessories for Yoto or personalized with your kid's name. It's amazing what's being created there. And we're really leaning into that because we think that's fantastic.
No, that's really cool. And yeah, we've got I think it comes in like that, almost like an orange mini suitcase, and ours is plastered with stickers. So I can definitely see the appeal of that. But look, Ben, I'm conscious we're slightly over time. But look, I've loved chatting, and thank you so much for coming on. It's been great to talk about the product, the vision, the financial results. I'm a huge fan of both the product and of your work in general. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks, Seb, for hosting.
Perfect. Well, look, if you ever want to come back on or share some news, just let me know.
Great. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, Ben.